Hi there, Linda here from Erica Michaels, and I'm ready to show you my new things for Nashville. So when you see this video, Nashville will just be, perhaps a week away, and you still have time, in most cases, to contact your shop if you want to pre-order something. But I will say this, I don't have anything that is limited edition or exclusive, that I'm going to run out of anytime soon. And so if you don't get it in for a pre-order, you can certainly ask your shop to get it for you anytime after the Nashville market when everything is released. So without further ado, let's get started. First, I want to show you a reproduction sampler that you may have already seen on Facebook. I've shared it in a sampler group and I've shared it on my own Facebook page, and it's just a stunner. This is Christy Barron. Isn't she something? I saw the original for this sampler. She's not in my collection, but a friend of mine that uses the same frame shop had brought it in to be framed after she'd acquired it. And I walked in and it was sitting there. She hadn't picked it up yet. And I just immediately thought, oh my gosh, I have to get my hands on this one. So I asked her if I could borrow it a little bit to chart it before she took it home and hung it on her wall. And she graciously said, yes, that would be great. So, lucky me. There's just so much to love about this. I think the border is a little bit unusual. It's not your standard sampler border. And she stitched it pretty consistently. Although, like a lot of samplers, when you get to each corner, they're a little bit different. So if you're going along and kind of stitching in a pattern, kind of watch those corners a little bit. I love the verse. It is a hymn tune or a verse for a hymn that goes way back. And I think it's just wonderful. And then the other thing that I think is so attractive about this is the color. There are reds, more than one shade of red, greens, a lot of neutrals. And then there's this lovely blue color that's in various places all around that really make it pop. It's full of baskets. It's got this striking row of carnation type motifs across the center. I don't have any history on Christy. I think she is probably maybe of Scottish origin, but that doesn't mean that this is an actual Scottish sampler. It could still be an American sampler. There aren't any crowns on it or anything like that, but we just really know nothing, which is always a shame. The other thing that you'll notice as you stitch this is there are a lot of birds. There are a couple of interesting larger birds in each corner. There are peacocks, there are roosters, and there just are little birds here and there. She's really put in a lot of birds. There are also a couple of little dogs. So she included all of her animals. She's got some just interesting motifs. When you first look at it, it's fairly symmetrical, right? But when you start working on it, you will see that there's a little bit of diversion from true symmetry, not so much in the layout, but in the colors. Oftentimes, for example, in the birds, there's a bird in each corner, but this bird is predominantly the dark green, whereas this bird is the red. And that happens a lot in the motifs as she goes back and forth. There's a little bit of variation in the color, and I think that just adds interest. And of course, it's kind of a full coverage sampler. So if you like that, this is for you. I think the other thing that attracted to me personally about it is, aside from just its overall look, I'm not a big person for houses on samplers, and I think that may seem strange to some folks, but this one I think is just marvelous. And it's not massive. It's a good size. This is stitched on 37 count linen. So you can see it's a decent size, but it's not massive. And of course it would be spectacular on a finer count high count linen, but really on anything that you like. So this is Christy Barron, and I hope you enjoy stitching her as much as I did. Now the next thing I want to show you is something called Liberty Games. If you remember, a couple of years ago, I released a pattern called Reindeer Games, and it was just very popular. People have really enjoyed doing it, and it's kind of a game board Scrabble kind of design. And so I have gone with a patriotic Americana theme, and we have Liberty Games. So I kind of went back to the Revolution times and maybe even a little bit before, and came up with various words, put them in a Scrabble type of format, and then tucked in a number of motifs. So we've got Independence Hall, we've got one of the founding fathers, you can decide which one. Got the Liberty Bell, there's a little Betsy Ross right here. We've got the eagle, the scales. Here are the redcoats and some of the Continental Army soldiers. And of course the flag with just the 13 stars. Here is the rattlesnake that was sometimes the join or die motto. I've put in a couple of other small symbols that may not be as commonly known to a lot of us unless you're from the New England area. So I have added some information in the chart pack that talks a little bit about some of those more unusual symbols, and so you can look at that and maybe even do a little bit more of your own research. So this one was a lot of fun. What I will say, I did this on a very neutral linen, and you can see there are places like right here under 13 colonies, I actually have 13 white stars. And it's subtle. If you would like more contrast, then you may want to go with a different fabric than what I used here. But it's still a neutral. So any lovely neutral that you like that works nicely with this Americana palette, go for it. I really don't believe in being locked in to the fabric that I have used. So particularly since some fabrics can be difficult to get still, you know, pick a wonderful neutral that you like with this color palette and get started. Now, along with and kind of following the Reindeer Games format, I also added a couple of smalls. I have a drum. We'll start over here. And it just incorporates, there's some of the Continental Army soldiers, the rattlesnake, Independence Hall, 4th of July, the eagle and the bunting. There's the colonial, the flag, the scales, and there's Betsy Ross again. And here you can kind of see where those 13 stars that she sewed into the flag, because this fabric is a little bit of a lighter neutral. It's more subtle. I'm okay with that, but change that as you like. I think the drum really turned out beautifully. And of course, I have a berry. I wanted to highlight Betsy Ross in the berry, so it's kind of like a Betsy's berry. She has her needle and thread. She's got her scissors. And again, there are those subtle stars stitched in. She's seated along with the rose, the red rose. So this berry is also part of the same chart pack. It's finished with a couple of gray and dark blue wools, some ribbon, and this is just an old vintage coat button. So that's Liberty Games. And it was, let's see if I can kind of prop it up for you so that you can see. There you go. Get the large game board design, the drum design, and the berry all in that chart pack. It's really a fun piece. So I hope you love it too. Finally, on this video, I'm going to kind of reintroduce you to the sampler book. I first created this 15 years ago. Years ago, I did, for a few years, a series of free charts for Rainbow Gallery to help promote their line of threads, because they have a huge variety of threads. And I did this was the last series I did for them. It's an A to Z series. And they've had, they got their models, all of that like usual. But then I really liked what this was doing, and I wanted to do something different with it. So I created the sampler book, and I designed a cover, okay, front and back cover, and the means to assemble them into a book. And each chart, which were free charts from Rainbow Gallery, and they still are, has the letter of the alphabet. There's a specialty stitch used somewhere in the little design that starts with the A, so in this case, Algerian eyelet. There's a little border, and there are just different fonts for that letter. And it goes through the entire alphabet. Now, when I did this, I stitched it on fabrics that I had on hand. So you can tell that each page is a little bit different fabric. So it's a really good way to use up smallish pieces of fabric that you have around and to stitch the different pages. Each pair of pages is stitched on a single piece of fabric and then folded on this outside edge. And then it's just all assembled into a book. And it was released, the book, the finishing directions, everything about it, perhaps, I think 2008, something like that. And it sold nicely for a few years. And then 5 or 6 years ago, especially when we started to see Flosstube and more social media, that type of thing, there was some interest again. So I published some more of them at that time. And then it kind of faded a little bit. But in addition, it had become a very cumbersome and not very efficient chart pack for me to publish. It was getting kind of expensive and just not very workable anymore, which is one reason I moved it kind of to an out-of-print status. But people still love it because it's classic, right? And so what I have done is I've reformatted it. So the format now, you still purchase a chart pack that has all the finishing instructions, the chart for the cover, front and back cover, all of that information is in the chart pack. But what makes it more efficient is there's also a lot of information, including the Rainbow Gallery charts themselves, which I can make available on my website. So once we have Nashville Market and this is officially released, you'll be able to go to the website and look up the sampler book, find that design page, just like, there's always a page for each design. Find the design page for the sampler book, and you will see a description of the new chart pack, a general list of materials, etc. But then you'll also see some links to Rainbow Gallery's site where you can download the charts, and also some PDF files that you can print off or save for yourself. And the combination of the two still gives you everything that you had in the original. So that's my solution to making this a little more accessible for everybody and available again, because everybody loves it. So that is the sampler book. Now, I have more for Nashville, but what I'm going to do is put that in a separate video so that you're not, if you only have a few minutes, you can watch this one and then come back and watch the next one. So I'll be back later. Bye.